All right, let's get into some of the reasons you may not want to move to Tampa in 2022. I'm Sam, and thanks for coming by the Living in Tampa channel, where we make videos about what it's like to live and move to the Tampa area. We are a team of realtors here in the area, so if you do want to shop for a home around here, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Call, text, or email. Everything's right there on the screen and in the description down below. But I want to spend some time today talking about reasons you may not want to move here. So I moved here in the middle of 2020, just about 2 years ago, almost to the day. And there are still things that I struggle with since I moved here, and I want to share those with you. All right, the first thing is the locals don't really want you to move here. I've been kind of treated like a transplant since I've come, and of course this YouTube channel exposes me to that a little bit. You'll see the locals at times get in the comments and tell me how wrong I am about things, even if I just mispronounce something. And of course everyone is kind of defensive about their hometown at times. But this is a little different. Even a friend of mine that grew up in the area has been trying to help me come up with some other video ideas. And one of his ideas was like ways to not act like a transplant. Florida is a very popular area for people to retire, for people to vacation, and there are a lot of transplants down here. And the locals have their perceptions of those, and we'll get into some of the ways that impacts them later. Okay, the second reason here in 2022, the housing market down here is still really hot. And what I mean by hot is that prices are going up still. Inventory is not really increasing in the 3 main counties that make up the area. It is increasing a little bit in Pasco County, but not in the other areas where most of the population is. And this housing market in the area is not really seasonal like other cities in the US. So during the winter here, we get a lot of people coming down to vacation, coming down to shop for a second home, and maybe they will own it and visit it themselves, maybe they'll own it and rent it out to other people. Then in the summer, we have the typical moving traffic where, maybe somebody's moving because they got a different job and they need to move while their kids are out of school. So those 2 main factors keep the demand pretty even throughout the year. Okay, the third reason you may not want to move down to the area is bugs. And of course, maybe you expect that there are bugs down here, and I expected that, but I have been surprised how many there are. And I'm one of those people that gets bit by mosquitoes inside. They find me no matter what, and no matter the remedies that people have recommended on this channel or in person, nothing really helps keep them away. Now, treating the bug bites is a different thing. That's doable, but keeping them away is so. But the bugs I'm really talking about are different. So we held off on paying for pest control at our house for a long time, trying all kinds of other remedies like this sugar borax mixture and other little traps that kill these bugs. The ones that are the most annoying and invasive are the cockroaches and the ants. So we finally broke down and decided we're gonna pay for pest control. We live in an older house. There's places where bugs could easily get in, but we have this place in our house where our living room is like a step down, and my wife calls it the precipice of doom, where the cockroaches step off of it and they fall onto their back, and then we come out to them in the morning just on their back, just kicking their legs. Not a pleasant sight. But we finally broke down, agreed to, that with this pest control company, they're gonna come out every month. So initially that costs $200, and then it's $200 3 times a year, and they come out every single month. So they did a treatment inside and outside the first time, and then they'll just do outside every time after that. We also have chickens in the backyard, and they cater to that very, very well. They didn't put any of the granules down in the yard, and they avoided spraying in the areas where the chickens go. But after we had agreed to all of this, pest control company was gonna come out the next day. We went to bed. We wake up the morning of our pest control beginning, and there were 15 cockroaches in our living room. And we have little kids, so it's not like our house is spick and span, but it's not that kind of an environment where you would expect cockroaches. There's no food around, nothing like that. So when the pest control guy came that morning, I told him about it, and he's like, he said he wasn't surprised at all because it was the first really hot night outside. So these bugs try to get inside, and he's like, oh, well, at least these are the good cockroaches. They're called palmetto bugs. He's like, these ones don't nest inside. They just are seeking refuge. So he's like, we'll spray the windows, we'll spray at these entry points, and it'll take care of it. And it has taken care of it for the most part. We've still had a few come in, and they pretty much arrive dead. But yeah, it's actually gone down quite a bit. Okay, the fourth reason is the heat. Of course, you're expecting it to be hot in Florida, but it really impacts your summer. You spend a lot more time inside in the summer, yourself and kids included, and this is just a different dynamic. One way that I notice the heat affecting my daily life is I'm thinking about what shirt to choose when I'm getting dressed based on whether or not I'll be inside or outside, thinking about whether I'm gonna have pit stains as I'm talking to a client or something like that. It's a little bit annoying, but maybe people just embrace it with Florida, I don't know, but it is a factor. It's a factor you're gonna have to deal with, that it gets really hot, that you're kind of retreating to the air conditioning during the summer. And during the summer, air conditioning in public places is so cold, like in the grocery stores or Walmart, Target, those kind of places, and malls, you go in and it's freezing. So people often carry jackets with them in the summer in Florida because every time they go inside, they know it's going to be so cold compared to outside. Okay, the number 5 reason you may not want to move to Tampa is it is filled with snowbirds and vacationers. So what's a snowbird? A snowbird is somebody who comes down here during the winter to escape a snowy winter up north to live down here when it's nice and mild. Snowbirds live in all kinds of properties, whether it's short-term rentals or they own another property that they come occupy during that time, or they drive an RV and park it in a park. There's all kinds of solutions for that subset of the economy down here. And on top of that, you also have a lot of vacationers down here during that time. I mean, we really have vacationers here year round. But let's talk about why snowbirds and vacationers are a factor. Okay, first, you may have a lot of vacant houses in your neighborhood. And when I say a lot, like more than one. And this just leaves your neighborhood feeling less family friendly and kind of desolate during certain parts of the year. Because there is this constant influx of snowbirds and vacationers, on the weekends the beaches are always crowded. Even the smaller beaches like up by where I live in Tarpon Springs are so crowded on the weekends. And then all the other little touristy areas in each of these little towns that make up the Tampa area. So in Tarpon Springs we have the sponge docks, and there's a big like sponging industry here that was started by a bunch of Greeks that came to this area for the sponging industry. And the sponge docks are this kind of kitschy little part of Tarpon Springs, and they get so crowded on the weekend. And like actually on the weekends, like there's more traffic, and I'm always so confused because it's just way more than normal, and people are here for the sponge docks. Yeah, and of course people visiting the beaches and these kind of touristy areas may be from the Tampa area already, and probably a lot of them are, but you do see this big influx every single weekend. And some of that is because of snowbirds and vacationers. And all of this just leaves what may be your new hometown feeling like people are constantly coming in and checking out the destinations and leaving. And that just has kind of a strange feeling. Okay, the 6th reason why you may not want to consider moving to Tampa in 2022 is low-paying jobs. So Tampa is not the kind of place where I would recommend moving without a job or a place to live and just figuring it out. There are a lot of places hiring, just like a lot of places in the US, but in Tampa most of those positions available are very entry level, and that probably is not enough income to make it in this area. Increasing housing costs is not a new thing for Tampa. It's not a pandemic thing. From 2015 to 2020, St. Petersburg was one of the fastest growing rental markets in the US, with rents increasing over that 5-year span by about 60%. And they've increased by about that much again since 2020. So maybe some of that growth is a little bit inflated by the pandemic, but not all of it. And as all of you have seen, the cost to purchase a house continues to go up and up in this area, and Tampa is now seeming like maybe it's a little too expensive for locals. If you're moving from the Northeast or the West Coast, it might seem affordable here to you, and even clients of mine that move from Chicago or Detroit areas think, oh my gosh, Florida's still cheap. And has cheaper property taxes and no state income tax, and people can see it their own way, but for locals it's feeling more and more expensive. Okay, the 7th and final reason why you may not want to move to Tampa in 2022, and this is one that has shocked me since I've been here. Tampa is quite a bit more southern than you would think, and locals like to get onto me for this one too, saying that Tampa's not in the South. My wife's uncle told me a story recently that when they were kids, they used to think of a line across the state just above Tampa. And just north of the line is the deepest part of the South, because it's further south than everywhere else in the South. And then just south of that line is mostly Yankees. So it's a really interesting perspective. but even across that line, you're gonna have Yankees above and you're gonna have Southern Field below that as well. And from growing up in a small town in Oklahoma, I don't mind a lot of that, but I think you may be shocked by the feel of it. And one thing I often point out, if people argue with me that Tampa is not Southern, out here in Seffner, just east of Tampa, is one of the biggest Confederate flags in the US, and it's over a Confederate cemetery. And it's flying proudly. Maybe not proudly, it's confusing. I don't know the whole backstory behind it, but it's there kind of as you're coming into town on I-4. You can see it, it's really confusing. So if that doesn't show some of that Southern pride, if that doesn't show some of that Southernness, then I don't know what does. So these are just some of the reasons why Tampa may not be a fit for you. And not all of these things are deal breakers for everyone, but I want you to have the most accurate and sometimes critical information about the area so that you feel confident in your decision. And if you do end up deciding to move down here, we would love to help you make the move. Our phone number and email are right there on the screen and in the description down below. Thanks for coming by.